Okay, everyone, let's go ahead and get started. It's 5:03. I welcome all of you to this workshop number 4 for the Fresno Reverse Triangle Transportation Area Plan. We're happy that all of you are here to attend. We appreciate that very much. I do want to say up front that we have 2 interpreters, and I would like to get that information out to everybody first before we get going. So I have Mr. B. Lohr is here, and he will be interpreting in Hmong. And then I have Emilia Rivera, who will be interpreting in Spanish. And if you would like interpretation, you'll see what looks like a little world symbol at the bottom of your Zoom screen. If you'll click on that in a few moments and choose either Spanish or Hmong, and you'll be put into a channel where you'll be able to hear the presentation simultaneously interpreted. And with that, B, could you go ahead and introduce yourself and let all the folks know that might need Hmong interpretation how they could do that, please? B, I'm not hearing you if you're speaking.
Okay, I have my thing. Can you hear me now?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, trong sách tận này sẽ để cho tôi là cộng cho tôi biết trong sách thật nó, giờ thì này là cộng nó, anh ấy sẽ hay xem lòng ở lồng móng là chế, này là một nhiều nhất là họ có screen nè, nhớ họ là họ để interpretation nữa nè, cho nên nhà họ mong là giờ Spanish, cho nên nhà họ mong cho nên họ lồng móng, cú yêu tôi trả lời trên nhớ cho nên mà nó, chào, thank you.
Thank you very much. And Emilia, if you could do the same thing, please, for the folks that might need interpretation in Spanish.
Hola, muy buenas tardes a todos y bienvenida a esta junta comunitaria. Para poder acceder a la interpretación, va a seleccionar, si está por computadora, va a seleccionar el globo que parece un mundo abajo de su pantalla en su panel de controles, seleccionará el lenguaje de español y poner en modo silencio el audio original. Si usted está por tableta o por teléfono, el proceso es diferente. Seleccionará los 3 puntitos que significan more en inglés o más en español y luego seleccionará en interpretación el lenguaje español. Muchas gracias. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, and I will start the interpretation now. And if you're in need of those services, please click the appropriate language at the bottom. Very good. If we can give just a moment for those to request interpretation that would like it. And then I'll get going. Okay, I think we're ready to go. So Gary has put up the agenda for tonight's meeting. I'll go over that just briefly. In a moment, I'll be introducing the project team and some of the stakeholders. Gary will then go over the overview and purpose of the project. We'll talk about the issues that have been uncovered in the study area. And then we'll talk about what the project team has come up with as far as the transportation improvements and strategies that are being proposed, as well as some of the cost estimates and benefits that will accrue from those investments in the future. And then we'll be closing and we'll talking about what's coming up next and how you'll be able to provide additional comments on the draft plan, which has been posted at this point. So you can tell there's been a lot of people who have been working very hard on this project, and I'll recognize Fresno Council of Governments, and the project manager on this has been Christine Kai and Braden Duran with the Fresno Council of Governments. Also been assisted by several other partners, the City of Fresno, the County of Fresno, Caltrans, who's provided the funding, Fresno Area Express Transit, and the Fresno County Rural Transit Agency. And I also want to specifically call out Leadership Council for Justice and Accountability. Shang is on and so is Ivanka. And they've both been very helpful in assisting with the public outreach for the plan. And you can see there are several other project partners that are listed on this slide. And then the consultant team, the lead for the project has been GHD. And tonight you'll be hearing from both Gary Mills and Mackenzie Clark. And then I'm with Regional Government Services. My name is Kim Anderson. I've been assisting with the public outreach. And we were joined by New Economics and Townsend Public Affairs.
Great. Thank you, Kim. And I'd just like to remind folks that we're going to keep the questions for the end. So if you have any questions, this presentation will last about 15 minutes, so bear with us. Some of the key challenges that we're looking at when we're looking at such a large geographical area are the non-existent multimodal networks, which just basically means there's not a lot of stuff on the ground. There's not a lot of bike lanes, and there's not a large amount of sidewalks. And so we're looking at that. We've also, some additional challenges are the planned industrial development that's coming into the community. And as that increases, the congestion will also grow and the pollution. And we will discuss that shortly. We have disadvantaged and low income status. I have a couple slides I'm going to share with you. So there are some mobility challenges to access and connectivity, some safety challenges that we are dealing with, and also air quality is huge, not only for this project, but for the entire San Joaquin Valley. As part of this, we looked at the Cal Enviro Screen results, and it's a pollution index that looks at basically your air quality is a key component, as is water quality, congestion, etc. As you can see by this graphic, our area is about 91 to 100%. So we're basically in the lowest tier of the environmental, which is quite common with the San Joaquin Valley. And you can see on here, we have the Fresno COG environmental justice community boundary, which is going to be revised. It's probably going to encompass more of this, but that was from a previous document, and we discussed that last time. This is the disadvantaged communities slide. Basically, this is due to, it looks at the economic impacts of the folks that are out in this area, primarily based upon income. As you can see, there's a lot of designated by Senate or Assembly, they're designated basically low income disadvantaged areas, which means that these areas do get higher credit when they apply for these jobs or for these projects through the grant processes. So we're touched base on that. Our objectives are to mitigate any negative impacts that will result in the future. This is, like I had indicated, air quality is huge, and congestion. We also looked at safety in that to the disadvantaged communities. Prioritize the health and safety of the existing communities is an objective as well. And we want to make sure that we're looking into the health of the community. That comes by mitigating air quality and congestion. And we have some ideas that we'll share with you that will show how we're going to approach that. We're also going to improve the connectivity of access to disadvantaged population centers, which means basically more opportunities for transit, for bike lanes, and for sidewalks within the study area. And then we also looked at some roadway and intersection improvements that will help with the overall improve the circulation flow of the study area. Previously, we went back. I think we originally were awarded this contract late 2019. We had our first. We did the existing conditions workshops, and you can see that's all on the website there at the Fresno COG. All of the background reports are on there. So that's when we put that on the website. The first workshop was in November at Washington High School, and then our second was Orange Center Elementary School. We had our third one approximately a month and a week ago, And then this is our final one for the virtual workshops. So these are where we get the comments from you folks, and this is why it's so important that you let us know so we can incorporate all this stuff into the draft plan, which is out already. I hope you've had a chance to at least start your review of that. We anticipate comments for that. We also have a social pinpoint tool that we'll be discussing later. So some issues in the area, which I kind of mentioned there, similar to our challenges, is the limited multimodal bike and pedestrian infrastructure that's out there. Also, we're looking at potential future areas for transit and other mobility services that would link this area with other areas of the county. We've looked at vehicular congestion, and if we can mitigate that, then we can improve the air quality, thus helping out with some of our approaches that we're doing to improve the air quality. We don't have any safe routes within the school or near the schools area. So we'd like to, see that maybe some safe routes to school funding gets advanced at some point. Also, I know there's a large concern about the heavy duty truck traffic through the residential communities, and we are going to address that. We have some slides tonight that we'll be able to help you do that, to walk you through that. Basically, this leads us to our RTAP approach, where we have a comprehensive network of multimodal facilities along roadways and intersections to improve the connectivity and safety. That's the key point to this project. And then we have transit and transportation demand management strategies that we're going to cover with you. We'll look at some capacity operational improvements. We also know that Caltrans is working on some of the state routes, and they have some concepts for improving the interchanges along 99 to full access. And then we will we have some key locations for safe routes to school. And we'll be talking, as I said, about the truck routes. And with that, I'm going to turn over to Mackenzie. She's going to discuss the transportation improvements and some of the strategies. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. As Gary was just going through, we developed objectives to work within the existing challenges of the RTAP study area. And then through the process of over a year and a half of public outreach effort and website interaction, and then the most recent virtual workshop about a month ago, we developed a better understanding of some key issues that the overall comprehensive RTTAP planning document needed to address. So within that, the RTAP recommends certain transportation improvements as well as strategies, and we've lumped them into 4 basic categories. So the first category are operational and capacity improvements. So those will address, congestion or delay at intersections and roadways. Then there's multimodal and safety improvements, and those are improvement recommendations that deal with bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure that of course play into safety benefit as well. As Gary mentioned, an important component of the planning process also revealed the need to address truck routing through residential areas, given that the RTAP study area does include a mix of existing residential communities as well as industrialized areas. And last but not least, we do have recommendations, and we work closely with the existing transit agencies in the area to develop some transit and travel demand management, or TDM, strategies. The operational and capacity improvements was a smaller focus of the study area because there weren't many intersections that we found that needed to be improved, but we do have the full list of improvements in the document that's available on the website, as we mentioned before. But essentially, we did extensive analysis to evaluate intersections and roadway segments throughout the study area to determine if there are any existing or future deficiencies based on anticipated growth within the area. Improvements include upgrading intersections and roadways, and that includes potentially adding additional turn lanes and intersection approaches, or even converting an intersection to a traffic signal instead of a stop control. And as Gary mentioned, Caltrans is also working on several interchange improvements along State Route 99. And those locations include Jensen Avenue, North Avenue, Central Avenue, and American Avenue. So getting into the multimodal and safety improvements, we are starting off with some example pedestrian improvements. So we looked holistically at the RTAP study area and recognized that there's definitely a lack of existing sidewalk, but not only sidewalk, there's a lack of pedestrian protection at intersections as well. So we made recommendations for bulb outs at certain locations where pedestrian activity is anticipated to be higher. Of course, making recommendations for high visibility crosswalks, any pedestrian improvement that helps to reduce pedestrian exposure to vehicles or to just increase visibility of the pedestrian is considered also a safety improvement. And similarly with bicycle improvements, there was limited bicycle infrastructure, including bicycle lanes or bicycle markings to help draw attention to the motorist that a cyclist is potentially sharing the roadway. So with what you'll see in the next slide is that this buffered class 2 and the class 4 bikeway, where the 2 arrows are pointing, those are recommended on every single major corridor in the study area. So we've recommended protected bicycle lanes, either with a buffer or a vertical separation, such as the class 4 bikeway along all of the major corridors. I can hear some background noise, so I'll just wait a second.
Yeah, if somebody could mute, please. Thank you.
Great. So the previous slide, and sorry, I should have elaborated more. Thank you so much. So as I mentioned, we have recommendations for bicycle lanes as well as sidewalk along the majority of these roadways. And that's working with the city and the county, as you can tell, based on the jurisdictional boundaries. The study area includes both city and county. So we developed as a project team roadway improvement examples that could include sidewalk, bicycle lanes, number of travel lanes, and ensuring that there's a two-way left turn lane or a center turn lane on roadways, especially where there's going to be a lot of truck turns onto and off of the roadway for safety concerns. And then the next slide shows where the improvements that I mentioned previously about bicycle and pedestrian facilities and safety improvements at intersections, where we've made those recommendations. And as you can see also, we've made recommendations throughout the entire RTAP study area for those improvements. And this is just an overlay of the two images that Gary presented before, showing the disadvantaged community status and within the RTAP study area and the surrounding areas, and showing how the recommended multimodal and safety projects overlap with those designations. So the third category of improvement types is to recognize the need to evaluate truck routing through the study area. And this slide is a little textual, but it is something that was acknowledged as the entire project team, including all the different stakeholders, that there are current efforts being undertaken by the city of Fresno to look at truck routing, not just within the RTAP study area, but a larger subset of the city of Fresno, with a specific intention to evaluate exposure in communities impacted by air pollution. And the fourth category that we looked at for improvements and strategies within the RTAP is transit and transportation demand management, or TDM. So again, we worked with stakeholders and as a project team to coordinate strategies with current planning efforts, and FACTS identified that they are currently working on developing short and long-term transit options to serve major job centers and industrial uses within the area. and that's primarily in the north of the RTOP study area. And then as well, strategies that we are recommending should be considered in coordination with the current truck rerouting study and the South Central Specific Plan planning efforts. The primary goal of making recommendations for additional or supplemental transit and TDM strategies is to mitigate air quality and congestion impacts and ensure that people don't have to rely on single occupant vehicles to get around, and as well as improving connectivity and access for disadvantaged populations. So in summary, for the transit and TDM strategies, there are recommendations to consider opportunities to expand transit service to the RTOP study area, whether that's with a fixed route to major employment centers and or a commuter shuttle. Transportation demand management programs such as ride sharing, carpool, vanpool, and demand response services can be led by public agencies, including Fresno COG, or by employers. If the employer is of a certain size, they are encouraged to develop their own TDM programs to encourage ride sharing, carpooling, and so on and so forth. There's also currently a program called Rev Up, which aims to provide ride-sharing services with electric vehicles to rural communities in southern Fresno. And last but not least, one of our additional strategies was to make sure that safe routes to school improvements are considered as an important component of this plan. And I won't read all the text on this map, but it's again available in the report. But what we did here is to try to locate where certain strategies that we developed with the stakeholders made the most sense in terms of spatially within the RTOP study area. And just to point out a few colors, the pink is where a primary employment center is, and green is a potential safe routes to school program priority project. So within the plan, we developed preliminary cost estimates for the multimodal and operational capacity improvements that we presented. So these costs don't include anything related to additional transit service or TDM programs or truck rerouting. But all in all, with improvements to 12 roadway segments or 43 miles, includes $348 million total cost. That includes contingencies and all the other support costs that go along with large infrastructure projects, and the 75 intersections reaches about 27.3 million. So we did a lot of extensive analysis to evaluate the potential monetized benefits. So of course, there's many benefits to this plan, but an important component in a lot of funding programs is to show real monetized benefit that can be realized through the implementation of these projects and through the spending of the project costs that we just went through. So multimodal induced demand benefit, which means you're encouraging more people to not rely on their cars, and so they're cycling more. There's a lot of dollar cost savings associated with that, and that results in about 200 million. The safety benefit, which has a correlation with reduction in fatal and injury crashes, because there are certain costs associated with those health savings, results in 64 million. And then there's also a vehicular delay reduction benefit, which is correlated with vehicle hours of delay reduction, which results in 19 million.
Great. Well, thank you, Mackenzie. Following this, we're gonna, I think Kim was gonna discuss the social pinpoint. If that's correct. We talked about this. This is a tool that we use to collect comments.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. Yeah, Social Pinpoint was embedded in the project website. Any of you who have been on the project website probably noticed there was a button What this allows you to do, and this is still active, you can click on the map and you'll see at the top there are several bicycle related, pedestrian related. There's some little icons that are moving around right now. Thank you. And so you can drop those on the map on any point, and then a box will pop up for you to input an issue that you've seen or to make a recommendation for an improvement. And I'll also take a minute at this point to say that while you're on the website, there are multiple ways to leave us a comment. You'll see that there's a comment portion where you can click on that. That can be just a general comment about either the plan or about the improvements. And then there's a separate option where you can just click and look at the proposed improvements. And there are separate maps that each have their own comment box that you can leave a comment that way. You'll also find email addresses on there, and we'll show you those at the end. So you could also email directly comments to the project team as well. And this is just another slide showing you what those icons look like that we were showing you on the previous slide that can be moved around. So the color of each icon and the actual icon itself denotes what type of improvement or issue that you might be talking about. And these were the same that were used at the in-person workshops that we were able to do at the end of 2019 and 2020. So we're mimicking those in a virtual format for you. And then we're all ready to what's next. So as I said earlier, there are multiple ways on the website or through email to provide comments once you've had a chance to review both the improvements and or the plan itself. There's been a 30-day public review process that will go through June 25th, so plenty of time to review and provide comments to the project team. We would also encourage you to share the information with your friends and neighbors. If you received an email from us, please forward that. And we'll also have the URL or the address of the project website that you can share with others. And with that, I'll turn it back to the project team. I will say we've got plenty of time to hear your comments this evening. You can either put those in the chat box and one of us will respond to any comment, or feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question in person.
And just before that, Kim, before we jump into
sure.
question and answer, just wanted to emphasize that, again, the plan is available for review for another 15 days. And the entire list of projects and strategies and improvement projects and strategies that we've gone through tonight, we just wanted to emphasize that those are, this is a planning document. There's no improvements that are going to be necessarily implemented. The jurisdictions, the city and county of Fresno, as well as the transit agencies, are all working collaboratively to develop, a workable solution for the many challenges and issues that our top study area faces. But just wanted to emphasize that, again, this is a recommendation or proposed improvement strategy to help along with that process.
And I should have said also, Mackenzie, that the presentation as well as the recording of the meeting will be available on the website as well for those that may have missed it this evening. Very good. We'll open it up for comments and questions.
It's like Ivanka has a quick comment or question.
Hello, good evening, everybody. Do you have the direct website link that you could post?
Yes.
While we were on here, I'm trying to just Google it to see if a resident were trying to get in, how easy would it be? And I keep coming up to the Fresno COG website, and yeah, they have a page for the reverse triangle, but it's not exact. You can't get to the meetings. Like, that would be a good place to have the link to tonight's meeting, and it's only giving the past meetings. There's no Zoom link in there. And so I'm not, yeah, it's just, it's not as easy as, I'm under Fresno Cog, reverse triangle, and it's not giving the information for tonight. And so I had 2 residents that I was texting and trying to send the information to so they could join because they couldn't find it online.
I'm sorry to hear that. I'm putting the direct link to the project website in the chat right now. And as I said, we will have the recordings of the meeting as well as the presentation up and available for anybody who would like to review it. Thank you. Do we have any other questions from the audience?
This is Nick Palladino, First and Site Club. Yesterday, I had a productive discussion with Gary and talked about the points we're going to bring up tonight. Also this afternoon, I believe I made it to your website and I put these comments in on the comment box regarding the figures. I just want to repeat them tonight for the recording. On figure number 1, I had to do with the width of the bike lanes. My comment was that they should be 7 feet rather than 6 feet. I see that all your bike lanes on figure number 1 are curbside bike lanes, and we should be recommending 7 feet rather than 6 feet to be consistent with the city of Fresno's in newly developing areas. I also added a comment that I believe I made in workshop number 2, but I did not make on last month, May the 5th, was that I was saying that all existing and planned collector and arterial streets should have bike lanes. That I noticed Clayton and Jefferson were not included as bike lanes, nor Maple Avenue south of Central. I do not know if those are planned to be collectors or arterials or not. But I know the city of Fresno's current ATP, they have as a vision statement, all collectors or arterials as a vision statement will have bike lanes on them. On number four, I believe it's vision number 4, if I can get out my paper, it has to do with bicycle boxes. I had a good discussion with Gary about that. And that one concerns me. It gets back to figure number 1. Figure number 1, it says shows all of your bike lanes as being curbside, but your bicycle box here, it shows the bicycle lane approaching the intersection between travel lanes 1 and 2, which is not wise. I'm referring back to NACTO's Urban Bikeways Design Guide, 2nd edition, and also many pictures of bike lanes I've seen on Table Forum and other venues, in which generally bike lanes are extended to the intersection. Bike lane is extended to the intersection, and then the bike lane is extended outward from the curb across the travel lanes. The way it's set up now is that you would have to basically drop either the curbside bike lane or the cycle track or separated bikeway some distance back, so that the bicyclists would have to weave or merge across the number 2 travel lane to get into that bicycle lane approaching the intersection. And then once he crosses the intersection, he would have to merge or weave across the number 2 lane to get back onto the curbside bike lane. So I think you need to modify your bicycle box diagram showing your bicycle lane, curbside bicycle lane extending to the intersection, and then the bicycle box extending across both travel lanes. Thank you very
Okay.
much.
Thank you, Nick. We appreciate the comment.
If I
see
could
that we
just
have-
respond, I
Christine.
think I've uncovered the issue with the bicycle box image, which again, that is from NACTO. All the images that we used as examples are from NACTO, but that image you're referring to, I believe, Nick, is the second travel lane is actually a parking lane. From what I remember when I stole that image from NACTO, I understand what you're saying. If there were two travel lanes, that wouldn't make sense, but I believe that that's a parking lane. And then I just wanted to also say that unfortunately our image, our figure 1 wasn't revised, but per your comments at the last workshop, we did revise the bike lane to be 7 feet. You'll see that in the report, but we'll make sure that that figure 1 for the proposed improvements on the project website also gets updated.
Yeah, it's just that looking at figure 1, I got the impression that you were recommending curbside bike lanes. And of course, curbside bike lanes implies no parking lane.
Well, yes, that is correct. All of the images in our examples are just that. They are examples, and the city and our county will be responsible for making the final recommendations.
Very good. We do have a few more people with hands raised. Vidal, if you would like to unmute yourself, you were next
Yes.
in the queue.
Thank you very much. My name is Vidal Medina. I'm the Citizen Change Advocate for Resources for Independence. Central Valley, we provide services to persons with disabilities. I have a general question. Who is the consultant on matters of accessibility for persons with disability on this project? Did you have an actual consultant with expertise? Over.
What type of expertise were you referring to? Like knowledge of ADA standards?
Well, if you are aware, persons with disabilities are a protective class. So there are a lot of things that must be considered. The ADA is just a small one. It's the law that's being used, but there's also architectural guidelines. There's also building codes. There's a lot of things that are involved. So that's why an expert should be used on these projects, a consultant with knowledge on what is needed to meet those mandates. Over.
Well, I can say that we did not have an ADA person involved per se. We work with ADA quite a bit as we do design work for curbs and gutters and street projects. But as far as the overall ADA, we don't have that. I'm not sure, perhaps, Kim, do you have anything to add on that? Have you had worked with this in the past where you've had some ADA issues that you've needed to hire a consultant for a planning study?
Actually, I have not been on a planning study where they have hired a separate consultant to specifically address issues of accessibility. I do know that they have been addressed in the planning studies, and Gary, I would imagine GHD also has taken some of that into account as far as that goes with this study, but no, I have not been on a plan where there have been specific consultants. If there are some issues that you would specifically like addressed or questions on specific issues in the study area, we would be happy to take those questions. If you'd like to provide them, either via email or on the website, which we've put into the chat, the FresnoReverseTriPlan.com. We're more than happy to take those questions and have the consultant team address them or provide some answers. And we do have a couple of other folks, if there was not another question related to that. And I want to say, I'm trying to see who the order was here. Ivanka, I believe it was you that was next.
Thanks. I was trying to continue the conversation about the bike lanes earlier. One thing that I noticed on page 9 where it shows the D1 and D2 diagrams, and it shows the protective bike lanes of class 4 design, which are the most protective. But I'm showing that it's only on Cherry Avenue. And yes, that is a very important street to have the best protective bike lanes because there is a school there. But the whole area has heavy duty trucks. And if you've ever been in an area where you've had to walk by next to a truck that's moving, you get sucked into the wind, just like the way your car does when you're passing. There's an effect there. And if you're on a bike, I don't see how anything less than a class 4 design on any of these roads that you are also traveling with heavy duty trucks, big rigs that are moving at full speed, then anything less than that would just be absurd. Like, you would need to and want to have bicyclists fully protected during this build out, not based solely on the fatality statistics that we know went into Cherry Avenue's decision to have class 4. You should have class 4 on any of these roads where the heavy duty trucks are going to be passing.
Okay, thank you for that. We also chose Cherry because it's got a nice north-south access up to Church Avenue to get bicyclists up through there so that they can head east and then go over to Golden State and make their way to other connection points. As far as class 4 on every facility, that's something we would have to discuss with the city and the county. But I agree, it should be safe. Also, I would like to add that this AB 617 truck study is going to come out with some routes. So there may be some other areas that aren't necessary that are going to be truck routes that are truck routes today, but won't be in the future. And so those opportunities exist to focus your bicycles away from the trucks and on some of the non-truck routes.
Very good. And we had another hand raised, Estela Ortega, if you would like to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Sí, pues se habla mucho de muchos proyectos aquí todo el tiempo. Son muchas reuniones que he estado en estos proyectos de carriles de bicicletas, banquetas y todo esto, pero no se mira el cambio. Entonces, yo estoy diciendo que se miran más industrias, se miran más carros de pesados. Entonces no hay un camino para caminar, ni un carril de bicicleta. Siempre miramos nomás carreteras con carros pesados o industriales. Debemos de mirar más en nuestra comunidad como banquetas para caminar, o caminos verdes para caminar y carriles de bicicletas. Gracias.
Thank you. Amelia, are you able to help us with the interpretation?
Yes, ma'am. Can you hear me?
Yes, we have you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry, I have to get on another device. Okay, so her comments are, yes, well, you're talking about all these projects. There's a lot of projects that all these meetings of these projects that I've been in, and we always talk about making all these bicycle lanes and maybe even some sidewalks, but I don't see your changes. So I'm saying, we see all of this industrial and all of these heavy duty vehicles, but we don't see the changes. There's no pedestrian access. There's no bicycle lanes. There's only heavy duty trucks. And we should focus more for the community to have these different walking trails or places to be walking around that is actually safe, or to use the bicycles.
We concur with her, and that's our plan, is to put together a transportation plan that helps pull together all the pieces, and then we can start looking at implementing some funding sources that we can pursue do that. I know it takes a lot of time before you, when you start planning and then go to public workshops. And then the tough part is we have to wait for the money, and it's very competitive statewide, but we have the projects in place, and we will be submitting applications for those, and hopefully they are selected for future funding in the future.
Thank you. I hope that answers the question. And, I do know that we have several of the partners on the call too, that, both the city and county, that will have some responsibility when it comes to, oh, I'm sorry, Estela, did you have another question?
Tenía nomás mi último comentario. Que se apoyara más a las personas que ayudan a cruzar las personas, ya sea en las escuelas o vías de peatones. Gracias.
Thank you. And Amelia, if you could
Okay.
help again. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we have you.
Sorry, I appreciate your patience. I just have to switch between the phone and tablet. But her comment is that she wanted to finish her comment, and she also mentioned that if we could also give some more support for people who help to get kids or people across safely on the actual crosswalks that exist.
That's a great point. That's part of Safe Routes to School. You can get some program money for that to do crosswalk exercises with trained people.
Very good. We do have a couple of other folks with raised hands. I see Sheng, did you have a comment?
Yeah, thank you, Kim and Gary. I wanted to talk about the cherry, and it's while it's ideal, for north and to go north and south. We've heard from residents time and again that it is. I mean, it is heavily used, but it is very, very residential, and they want to make sure that trucks, although we want it to be multimodal, it's very difficult for trucks to also share the road here with cars and bicyclists and pedestrians. Again, it's a very popular road, and so residents have said before that, especially on Cherry and on Central, that they don't want to see more trucks going that way. And so while it's beneficial to have these road improvements and expand or make them have them accommodate different modes of transportation, it's really challenging to have these trucks also on the same roads with such popular destinations on Cherry. Additionally, with the South Central specific plan going on, I mean, I know that they're happening at different timelines, but it's really important, to do the rezoning and include the buffers and mitigation measures that can really make this place, make this whole area accommodate residents more, because it feels like these plans are supporting industrial growth with benefits to residents as a secondary thing. It's not so much a priority, but that it's really benefiting industrial growth. And I think that's where I think that's the crux of this, the issue here is that residents, are still competing with truck traffic and whatnot, and looking for alternate routes or reroutes. I know that's another study. So making sure that, the streets that residents use the most are accommodating them and their needs, because again, they've lived there for a long time and will continue to live there, have generations of families that live there. So I think it's important to make sure that, the popular routes are reserved for residents, and that trucks are rerouted or directed away from sensitive uses such as residents' homes and the school and the places of worship. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheng. Gary, did you want to make any Any comments in response, specifically?
Well,
from-
those are valid comments. This is industrial land use. And that's what we were provided with. And we weren't able to work with the other project. We got delayed prior to us completing this one, which is the South Central plan that does have some land use zoning differences. For this process, we were tasked to use the existing zoning from the general plan. So that's the land use comes from the counties and the city, and that's set. The COG does not do that. The COG facilitates transportation within the region. So if it's land use issues, it's going to have to be taken up with the city or the county. But our task is, given the land use, then we can make it accommodate for this multimodal approach that'll help the users. In looking at it, Cherry's also unique. It does have some, at the north end of Cherry Avenue, there are some large industrial sites that do have that will continue to have truck operations. However, to the south of North Avenue, I believe it starts to get a little less industrialized. So that's one of the reasons why we selected that. But you're right, it's based upon the land use of the area. So we're moving ahead with what we have and putting together the best plan given the land uses.
Thank you. We have another person with a hand raised, Lisa Flores. Would you like to unmute yourself and ask your question? Or I can unmute you.
Well, yeah, hi, can you guys hear me?
Yep, we have you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, hi. Well, I have some concerns actually. First off, especially along roadways with high
I'm sorry,
heavy
Lisa.
traffic and this cyclonic thing that happens when you're on a bicycle.
We'll do our best to capture what you're saying, Lisa, but you're fading in and out. I'm sorry.
How about now? Can you hear me?
That's better.
Okay. You're not designing this with safety in mind. You're only designing it since you're dealing with a highly industrialized area, you have to look at bicycle safety. And if you're only looking at the numbers, that's only going to allow you to do minimum. And you need to do more than minimum here as this area develops. Also, too, you need to look at the current specific plans that are going on. And if you've only been look at what is current and is not, it's actually built on mud that it's written on. If you're not actually looking at, you know, what's going on in the other specific plans that are coming along with regard to zoning. And as those get approved, you guys are going to have a document that's newly minted that isn't even worth the paper that it's written on as these, and it may be in conflict with these other specific plans. And you really need to look at that. Unless, of course, you want your contract extended and make more money on the roadways, getting caught up in that cyclonic vortex that happens when the vehicles go by them. You know, you're talking little kids, you're talking kids. And you have to think when you're dealing with schools and children, you have to go above what the numbers say and really look at the safety issues of the children. Because you can just base everything on numbers and nothing really improves until some child dies. And if a child dies on this road and you didn't design it right because you did not look at this diligence to go above and beyond, to look at, is this really safe knowing trucks go down this way? You know, this is sort of cyclonic atmosphere that is created, then you might have blood in your hand. Just
Thank you, Lisa. I think we got most of what you said, and it would be helpful also if you would provide something in writing as well, just to make sure we got everything. But to kind of summarize, I think you have some concerns about safety in the area, you particularly when it relates to children and getting to school. And you also had some concerns about whether other planning efforts are being taken into account. And of course, the project team has, to the extent that they were available, taken into account other ongoing planning studies. You know, having been in the kind of around this sort of planning before, that there are studies that go on simultaneously and sequentially as well, and that, you know, once we get to the point where some of the local agencies are looking at implementing actual improvements, that a lot of that information does get updated at the time that the actual improvements are planned. And so we realize that this is pretty high level planning study at this point, but that as this one moves forward and comes to completion, and some of the other specific plan studies also do, that there, you know, things will morph and change as we go along. So your comments on this are very much appreciated, and I'll ask if there was someone else on the project team that would like to speak to that. Otherwise, Ivanka.
Excuse me, I actually question your methodology and forecasting on this, actually, because I think that if you do not forecast this right, as far as timing and financing of expansion of these projects and implementation of these projects, that what's going to happen with the city and the county is they're going to do bare minimum or nothing at all. So I think your forecasting's off.
Well, we've got your comments and understand what you're saying. Ivanka, you were next up. If you'd like to unmute yourself and give us your comments as well.
Yeah, thank you, Kim. I do think what you just said is kind of referring to the comment / question I'm really wondering about is this plan going to be contingent upon? Is there going to be something written into, like a contingency of, I know you've stated like you're aware of the 617, you're aware of the truck rerouting study of the city, you're aware of the South Central specific plan, but with all of those still pending, how can you truly complete an accurate plan when those are three major factors that deal directly with the land use of what hasn't been decided on? So to state that you're just using what you have and moving forward doesn't make sense to me, because it's the cart before the horse type of thing. Or in this case, you're doing it so like backwards of based off of information and data that is right now as we speak pretty much invalidated. So where is the room in this plan to truly acknowledge that and state that while we are looking at this as it currently is right now, even in the CEQA process, you're already outdated. You're already outdated because of the impacts that we can see through every single project that's coming through right now in this area. So I feel like you guys, with all your expertise in transportation, it's like you're putting a lot of energy into something that you may personally know we're going to have to turn right around and revisit this, because we're speaking on things that are already outdated. And that's, I mean, it's not fair to you guys, but for the community, they're already seeing from what's being placed in this plan that it is not identifying as we speak the bulldozing, the construction, and the development that is happening that's already ahead of this plan. So maybe I'm saying exactly what Lisa is saying as far as forecasting, but it just feels like it's already like technology. You're already putting something out that's already outdated. And that's really unfortunate for this area, because it is so pro-industry and ignoring community that has been there for many years.
Well, thank you very much, Ivanka, for the comment. You know, and I will say, and I'm sure the rest of the team will chime in here as well. I mean, with this study and with, you know, all other studies, there is, you know, the idea that the funding is available and so the study is completed. And while this is true of all planning studies, more information will come out later and there will be changes. What the study has looked at has been based on existing land use in the area, and that would include if it was an industrial area and it had industrial planned, then of course that would be looked at as far as the forecasting piece of this study. So, you know, what's not looked at is what might happen if there were changes in the future. But a lot of the improvements that have been recommended as a result of that forecasting can begin to address some of the issues. And then as it comes time for improvements to be implemented, there is additional opportunity then to consider what other work has been done. But I fully understand, and the project team understands, you know, what you're saying as these things develop sequentially, that there's always going to be new technology, new information. You know, as you know, land use and transportation are very dynamic, and those will be and can be changing as well. So the project team is noting your comments and thanks you. And I would open it up if the rest of the project team or city or county on the call would have anything that they would like to add to that.
Kim, this is Christine.
Thank you.
You know, I think you did a good job trying to address Ivanka's comment. So, you know, we fully understand there are multiple projects going on regarding this area. We started our project about close to 3 years ago. And even before some of the projects even started. So, but it is a study. You know, a lot of transportation improvements start with a study. So this is a study that we are trying to see what kind of improvement will help address the issues that residents in this area are currently experiencing. So the proposed options, improvements are going to be considered and looked at by the city and the county, and as they develop the plans for this area, and they will consider the proposed changes. And if they feel this is something feasible, you know, regards funding, regards whether it's appropriate with the rest of the community, they will incorporate those our proposed recommendation into their plan for future implementation. So that's how the entire process starts after the city actually include our proposed changes or improvement in their plan. And then the city and the county will start seeking funding for these proposed projects. So we entirely understand there are projects concurrently going on. For example, the reroute study that the city is working on. I believe they just started working on that project. So because that project is more specifically focused on traffic issues, we feel like it's more appropriate for that study to actually propose rerouting options for this area. So if you read the document, we actually point to that study for truck issue recommendations. So we just want to, you know, say this is, you know, how the study started, and our board, when we present this plan to our board, they're not going to, you know, adopt this plan. They're going to look at the recommendation and accept the plan. And then the implementation will be up to the local governments down the road. So I don't know whether City of Fresno folks or county folks have any comments regarding how the plan is going to be, or proposed projects in this plan can be implemented down the road.
We do have one.
I'm Christine, and can I have a moment?
Yes.
Yes, hi, Sophia Pagalatis with the City of Fresno Planning Department and member of the project team. Just wanted to say that, yes, I hear the concerns about, coordinating all the different plans. And we actually we waited as long as we could in this planning process to see if there was a way to, bring a proposed land use scheme in, from the South Central specific plan process, but we just were unable to do it because of the timelines here. But I think all is not lost in that this plan is, it's been done at the COGS level, and it is a resource for local agencies. It is not necessarily going to be adopted. There is no obligation for, a city to adopt it. It is a study, so it is, information. So I think I just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you, Sophia. That was very helpful. Stephanie, did you want to go ahead and read the question that we had in the chat?
Yes, of course. Rosa Depew asked if we're unable to put she's unable to put her hand up. I apologize. She'd like to know what is being done with the traffic on Cherry Avenue due to the Cherry Avenue auction. Traffic can line up all mornings on Saturday and Tuesday, and then you have merchants on the side of the street. She's worried about how emergency vehicles can get access if they're needed.
Yes, thank you. This is Gary. We did add another section to this draft report. It's actually in the appendices regarding the Cherry Avenue auction. We discussed your concerns with the county, and we looked at, they do have a traffic management plan that they have done. However, that was completed about 11 years ago, and it's due for an update. So we've asked the county to move ahead following acceptance of this plan to discuss with the Cherry Avenue client to update their traffic plan. I also did notice some areas where I'd like some specific pedestrian counts done during the event, and that's identified in the email, and actually recommended specific control type for pedestrians should that move forward. So we have looked at this, and we've prepared a section, and it is in the report, the appendices. So I'd like to thank you, and we've heard your concerns on that, and hopefully there will be followed up.
Yeah, I did want to say there was, and I apologize if I'm saying your name wrong, Pamphio Serrero. You had a couple of comments in here, and I'm happy to read those for you, unless you wanted to unmute and say these yourself. But what was said, oh, go ahead. But what was said was that there was an appreciation for the efforts in all the meetings, but if there was no funding, we should probably stop issuing building permits to developers. And there was a comment that I think we're in agreement that we can't accommodate more traffic until all improvements have been completed. So I did want to acknowledge that that comment was in the chat. So we're at 6:12. We have about 15 more minutes if there were additional questions or comments from those of you in the audience. Gary, I'm not seeing more raised hands at this point, and I can put it back out there to see if there was anything else from any of the members of the project team. But I do want to note that the slide that's up now My email address is on there, kanderson@rgs.ca.gov, and the project website is also here as well. And it's FresnoReverseTryPlan.com, and we're happy to take your comments either by email or on the website. And with that, I hear a few people jumping off. Was there anything else from the rest of the project team? I'm going to take that as a no and say thank you to everybody that participated in this workshop, and we have until June 25th to get additional comments in on the plan.
Yeah, thank you for taking your time tonight, and please feel free to leave additional comments.
Good. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.